Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robert Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. This week we have another special guest. But first, don't forget, if you want to try Booth, use the code PAP200 to get $200 off your purchase. Our guest is an innovator, Jonathon Rowden from GPU. The company, I'm not sure what the company's called, but the product is GPU. Now, this is too techie for me. I'm way out of the league of this one, but the other guys might step in. But can you give us just a bit of a background, Jonathon? And also welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Actually, our company is named GPU Audio. We've sort of aimed to be the Kleenex, of new audio technology in a certain way, because it speaks directly to the innovation that we're working on primarily, which is audio processing from the lowest possible level that we could basically approach it from, right? And the conception is, how can we reimagine or rediscover the way that we process audio in order to give people truly next gen, tools and abilities to create music production tools of the future. And that's essentially sort of, the core of what we do. So that's why we're called GPU Audio. Some people might see the name BrainGens, which was a former name. Company was founded in Switzerland a number of years ago, almost 7 years ago now. Very much a stealth company for many years. I came on board about 2 years ago, and since then I'm now co-founder and the chief business development officer, which is a fancy way of saying I form all the partnerships with third parties and help plan products, and generally have really helped to kind of cast vision, for what our mission is as a company.
So the basis of what you're doing and the reason that we wanted to get you on the show is the fact that you. And again, a bit like AP, I'm a little out of my depth with this stuff. But basically what you're doing is creating plugins, reverbs, etc., that don't use the CPU, they use GPU. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. And more specifically, why would you want to do that, right? That's the question everybody has. Like,
yes,
my CPU is working great. Why the hell would I want to use my GPU? And it's like, well, it actually comes back to a problem that people have been trying to solve for at least 10 years. They've seen, as you guys probably already know, a GPU has thousands of cores on it. I believe mine has well over 8,000, maybe 9,000 cores on it. It's an Nvidia GPU with what they call CUDA cores. So, these cores are all running, maybe like 1500 megahertz. So it's a little bit per core, the clock speed is a little bit slower than your CPU. But when you have thousands of them running in parallel, your imagination immediately starts to jump to what are the possibilities with this, right? It's like, I'm constantly bottlenecking on CPU power, which is why we have external DSP hardware, right? So, it begs the question, like, what if that wasn't an issue anymore? What if I could offload even just my favorite plugin, or maybe all of my least favorite plugins, and then save my CPU for my favorite plugin, right? Either or, what would happen if we were able to handle, DSP in a parallel processing situation with a processor like a GPU that, because it's been designed for visualizations and graphics, has thousands of cores as opposed to, maybe 8 or 16 even, right? So,
Don't most plugins only use one CPU core?
Right. So that's the funny part, right? Is like, a lot of companies, like even some DAWs, have come out and said, oh yeah, we support parallel, threads and stuff like that. But then, the people who are making the plugins aren't really, working hard to innovate on that side too, because there's just there's a host of different issues with that, notwithstanding, the issues that lie within the VST3 sort of container itself, right? So kind of get back to what GPU audio is and how we, solve this problem. And again, it's not just solving one problem. It's also, creating possibilities. So we're solving problems and creating a next gen standard so that people can create things that they maybe weren't able to even envision before. But yeah, so what we've done is we've made it possible to actually do GPU processing in parallel with audio. Audio is normally processed, like you said, sequentially. Sometimes it's a terrible analogy for the audio engineers, and they'll all send me hate mail and stuff. But I kind of imagine like a tube in the sewer, right? How many rats can you fit in at the same time? Well, as fat as the rats are, they got to move as fast as possible, right? They just got to be hustling, right, to get through their, to get like 500 rats through a tunnel at the same time, right? But what if that tunnel was widened out and they could all pass through in the blink of an eye, right? That's kind of the idea with this parallel processing is like, okay, if we can accomplish this on GPUs and we can do it with low latency, then it unlocks possibilities for extremely high DSP loads to be handled in real time, which effectively will impact the ability of, machine learning based plugins, AI based plugins, anything that has heavy load DSP, we can now process, anywhere from 20 to 40 times faster and more efficiently on the GPU as opposed to a CPU. And the core innovation of what GPU Audio has done as a company is solving the problem of the latency. If you do any state of research on Google right now, you're going to find people saying this is not possible, this tech cannot exist, because GPUs are known to have in excess of 400 milliseconds of latency in the latest university research, over the last decade, especially when it pertains to audio experiments. That's where our patented scheduler technology comes in. It's essentially this. It's very complicated, but it was worked on over a period of about 5 years, and that has enabled this to be done basically in real time. 1 millisecond latency within VST3s. 150 microseconds is the current benchmark for outside of the VST wrapper.
Wow.
And we can do it over the cloud. It can be networked. So, I can use my MacBook and I can use the DSP from my graphics card on my gaming PC just being connected to the router, that type of crazy stuff. So does that answer your question?
Wow. That's incredible.
That answers a lot of questions. Yeah.
Doesn't it
Okay.
just?
It also opens a lot of cans of worms, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering how it could be relevant to us on Mac in the short term. I see that you have Mac support coming in the down the pike, but now I can see where it comes in, where you literally would have a computer that you'd built as essentially like a server, if you want to call it that. And that would be where you would do all your heavy lifting, is on that giant, noisy, fan-laden monster PC.
in my particular case, yes, because I'm a shameless crypto miner, and then I also love to play games from time to time.
How did I know you were a crypto miner? When I saw the GPU graphics card in RTX 3080 Ti, I was like, this guy, he's probably into crypto mining. I'm just saying. Okay.
Shameless buyer of ApeCoin, which actually just went bonkers yesterday, almost to it was like $17, and I bought it at 11. It's great.
Hey.
But yeah, I'm not a huge crypto trader, but I do like to hoard Bitcoin. I'm a hodler, as they say. But yeah, when it comes to Mac, so I guess maybe giving you like a really quick company roadmap, of kind of what the technology is doing right now and what it's going to do in the near future would really sort of answer that question for you. So we had to start somewhere. So we started with Windows PCs and Nvidia cards. Reason being,
Good choice, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Windows fan, and I think Nvidia sort of runs the world, anyways, in a lot of senses. So we started there, and since then, we've released an early access plugin. This is a super simple convolution reverb. It's not meant to change the world. It's just meant to work, right? But the point is that it can work at scale. So like on my current GPU, I can run about 200 instances of a stereo convolution reverb at 1 millisecond latency within Reaper, right? So that's kind of like my personal stress test. But the early access program is really here to get people to help test the technology, stress test it, find a bunch of bugs. Different DAWs have different bugs because of their implementation and the way that they utilize GPUs for GUI design and drawing, which is, for layman's terms, the graphics, of your plugins. So there's that. And then after early access comes, we're going to release a beta suite of plugins that come in June. That's going to be a whole production suite of what we consider to be sort of like some bread and blood. We were talking about Vikings before the show.
Yes, that's right.
Bread and blood. Yeah, send your blood donations to my Bitcoin address.
That's right.
But yeah, so kind of what I consider to be bread and butter plugins, for production. And again, that's, to make a statement, to make a point, try to get this going. But during the beta, when beta drops at NAMM in June, we're going to continue the early access program. And that early access plugin is where we're going to roll out features like AMD GPU support, audio unit GPU support, Mac OS support, M1 support. The list goes on and on. And thankfully, we've actually made a lot of headway in most of those areas pretty quickly. So I think the final M1 support could come a lot sooner than later, which would of course be super exciting for everybody, who's interested.
Yeah, that would be me.
So tell me, with the plugins, can you use third-party plugins with GPU?
Absolutely. So the whole purpose of this company is not to sound like a total apologist, you know what I mean? But, I come from a background, I come from a jazz background. I'm, rooted in community-based music, right? Where it's, it is kind of a dog-eat-dog world in the jazz world too in LA, but at the same time, there's a sense of collaboration is the new competition. And I've believed that for at least the last 5 years, since I started kind of branching into technology and joined GPU audio. So, it was really important for us to make sure that we're not just creating a plugin, we're not creating a suite of plugins that'll have some sort of competitive advantage. But, we're looking at the greater good here. It's like this technology, people have been wanting it for like at least 10 years. And in some cases, I hear people in the interwebs, leave comments on YouTube videos and stuff saying, I've been looking for this for 20 years, and I mean, for me, it's really important that other companies are able to use this tech. So in addition to just making plugins, we're also releasing an entire SDK. It's a modular SDK. We have new ways of creating GUIs where you can basically use like Unreal 4K graphics in your GUI design without affecting, your performance. It'll have all the scheduler technology built in. People can use this to implement from basically any platform they want. It's not just plugins. So I think, in fact, one of our first collaborations is with a company called Mach 1 Technologies that creates possibly the world's most flexible open source SDK for spatial audio mixing. And they're working on an exciting platform that's a standalone platform for spatial audio creation that's going to be powered by GPU audio. So yes, the SDK is going to be available, and we are working directly with third parties that want to take advantage of this tech as it begins to kind of sweep over things.
A couple of things. Firstly, I didn't realize Jed Clampett was into plugins, and didn't realize he was waiting 20 years to get his hands on the GPU system.
I'm sorry, I don't know whose voice. I was channel.
The Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh, that's right. My dad used to talk about Jed all the time.
Oh, great! Thank you for that. Yeah, it makes me feel young. Excellent. Sorry, George. Over to you.
Oh no. I wanted to get an idea. So, for I think I'm thinking of my audience here. Some of these folks that are listening are definitely high-level engineer audio geeks, but 85 to probably more percent of them are very low, relatively lower tech people. But I guess the question would be is, how do you know when it's time that you need more processing power in terms of going from a CPU-based system like on a Mac M1 to needing to go to something more hardcore like a GPU-based tool set? When is the user? Because like you said, somebody said 20 years ago we've wanted this. Why did they want it? Were people running into a limitation all the time? Is it keeping people from being able to produce what they want to produce because of this barrier of performance?
That's a really interesting question for me because I think about it both from a user standpoint, but also sort of a philosophical side. And I'll start with the user side. I think it depends on the user. So my former life, I was a professional saxophonist, career improviser. I ran into these issues all the time. I specifically remember a period of time where I spent over $3,000 on a MacBook Pro. This was a very big purchase for me, and I was so excited about it. And I went to go and record some live sessions, and lo and behold, I was running into weird issues. You know what I mean? I was running into, and it wasn't something I expected, right? Because it's like, okay, I spent this much money on a product that should just work, right?
2016, right?
Actually, yeah, probably it was
okay,
around
go on.
So for me, my personal experience. dictates a lot of the way I feel about that question. I think that for, like you said, maybe that 85% of your audience or so, they probably do run into limitations. I mean, but then there's also limitations that we don't talk about. And those limitations are the things that we do that are status quo. It's the concessions that we make because of the lack of technology that we don't even realize we're missing.
That's a good point. Yeah, expand on that idea.
Yeah, so like for me, a really big one is having to sum your tracks or having to likewise just export things and pre-render them out and import them back into a session, right? Like, we do that stuff all the time. I mean, I'm a sound designer now, so
or freezing tracks.
Yeah, exactly. Freezing tracks or having to pre-render things out so that you can get an idea of what it sounds like. And then you're like, crap, that doesn't sound right. I got to go back and fix that in the other session. So there's this kind of ping pong in between things. There's this workflow that we've all come to accept that, it could be improved upon. And I think that's the key of innovation, is looking at things of how can we, not how can we squeeze users for more money, right? But how can we actually improve on the existing workflows? Because, a better workflow means better delivery time. And for me as an independent artist, perhaps that means that maybe I can accept more contracts, right? Because I think a lot of independent guys don't have big studios of like 5, 6, 10, 20 engineers to work with. And, the importance of being able to finish a project within a couple of hours, maybe that'll make a big difference to some. So you expand that idea and, it starts to get to your wheels turning about, how can we improve workflow? What are other ways that we can improve on this? So I guess that's my best answer, or at least my first gut reaction answer to your question.
Yeah. Satisfies my needs.
On the flip side, what's the end game? Like in terms of where GPU audio ends up in, say, 10 years, what's the goal? Are you looking at a door of your own, or what's the end game?
Well, can't really say at all.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm not kill you.
Without giving away any secrets, but surely it's more than just. I guess it's hard for you to answer in retrospect, but
I'm just messing with you. Yeah, I was going to make another joke about Bitcoin. Well, send me a Bitcoin and maybe I'll tell you. But yeah, so this question is actually really well related to your past one, because my other point was going to be, the needs and the bottlenecks and stuff that professionals like hardcore professionals, nerds, I guess you'd say, are going through. Like, I know a guy in LA, and I'm sure he's not unique, or I heard about this guy that he's using 3 computers in total to do his Dolby mixes, something like that. Like he's rendering on one computer and then he's mixing on the other one and stuff. And, we can get rid of all that mess too. Short and sweet to put it that way. But yeah, so this really ties into the future plan. So, our step 1 was we need to announce ourselves to the world. We need to say that GPU audio as a technology, not just as a company, but as a technology, is now a viable option, right? It's either a viable alternative or a viable future next-gen standard. We tend to err on the side of the latter because we're, positivists in a certain way, and really think that, it can scale super fast if we can become, the more success we have and the faster we can grow, which is why we've expanded to over 30 employees right now. And we did a fundraise, late last year that was really successful, and we're going to do another one at the end of the year probably. But yeah, where we're going, we're expanding from this initial plugin offering, I guess you would say, to again, inculcating third-party members and to help them develop. We're going to give them the SDK. We're going to license the SDK to some, directly, and then others we're going to work directly with them, to kind of help build it. We're building partnerships with other companies that way. Mach 1 is the first one, and there's a bunch of other ones in the pipeline. And then from there, we want to just kind of see it expand. So one of our most exciting partnerships that we have right now is actually Nvidia themselves. So we were brought into their Inception accelerator program, which gives us a lot of access to, really cool funding. It gives us access to a lot of different departments within Nvidia. There was kind of a rumor that someone very, very high up at Nvidia was really excited about our tech, which is really cool. And he, or this person in particular, was able to kind of spread the word around. And, now word's getting around throughout Nvidia, and we have multiple departments that want to talk about implementation. So the long-term scheme of GPU audio really is not how we can just influence plugins, but how can we create an interconnected pathway between other virtual workflows, other platforms, and make audio itself, audio workflows themselves, the truly interoperable, not just with each other, because the state of collaboration right now is people are like, oh, how can I get Pro Tools to kind of work with my Ableton session? And it's like, well, that's dope. But what if your Pro Tools session worked with, like a program that has nothing to do with audio, right? What if it worked in Blender? Like, what if we could connect all of these different things and create a sort of an ecosystem or an infrastructure for this to happen, based in the cloud with low latency? So that's kind of where we're going with all of this. We have some really exciting technology that is already built, and we're building it in what we call modules. And these different modules that we've developed are being tested right now with focus groups, which people can apply for to be part of if they're in the pro audio community. And part of the goal of those focus groups is to create, this future infrastructure for like hardcore GPU audio cloud processing. So what that means is that your DSP can be on the cloud if you so choose, and it can function within 1 millisecond latency, and your processing doesn't have to take place on your actual computer, in the not so far away future. So that's really where we want to go, and we want to bring audio and high performance computing together. We want to open those channels because I think it's time. I think it's time that post studios and stuff like that don't have to upload their shit to Dropbox, and send that over to whoever's working in whatever other program or virtual production.
So, it sounds like this has got far more reaching possibilities than just audio, though. Outside of audio, there's got to be a billion different applications for this sort of thing.
Yeah, so the low latency part of the tech stack, definitely. So like we've talked with Nvidia, and we've talked with other companies too. There are hardware companies that want to talk about how to implement, and by the way, not all GPUs are noisy and super loud, right? You can get a gaming laptop that's super quiet. Or, different companies have embedded, GPUs that you can take and you can embed it like in speakers, for instance. Let's say Pro Audio speaker company came, or someone in public transit said, hey, we want to implement, noise canceling AI technology, throughout this public transit situation. Like, can we replace our ARM processors with like tiny little GPU processors and do 40 or 100 times the performance on DSP? And it's like, well, the answer is yes. So, anywhere that GPUs are used and anywhere that audio is used is the answer. That's where we could go with it. We just happen to be passionate about audio, right? We're passionate musicians and, producers. I think almost everybody in the company is a music producer. We're all talking about doing like a collaborative album or something, which probably never happened. I feel like that's something that like everybody talks about. But yeah, so the low latency part of the GPU audio innovation on that tech that we call the scheduler, like that could be implemented across anything that uses, GPUs, for instance. So like, let's just say that like a major GPU company is doing broadcasting solutions, like they're handling live streaming, or maybe they're like a major media streaming platform for movies and TV. If those companies want to be able to utilize even lower latency on the GPU, our tech stack from the ground up is sort of built to do that, right? Because that's where the innovation came from. So it's one of those situations where, yes, it can be implemented in many different ways. And this is just kind of the beginning of our journey. But yeah, our focus definitely is on the pro audio community and on, building this structure. But again, it's like, I'm sort of like a networked individual, hive mind kind of like aware person. So I'm really thinking about, is the pro audio connected to other communities, and how can those communities interact with each other in more meaningful ways and in more efficient ways, right?
Yeah, right. Well, if you decide to do your collaborative album, you could do something like, We Are the GPU, or, do they know it's GPU? Something like that. I don't know.
Gosh. This is getting spicy.
It is getting spicy.
So do you guys sit around the office measuring your teraflops?
Are we still talking about GPUs here?
I was going to say, what are we talking about, George? Is that your Friday night game at the bar?
Well, that's how we measure our performance.
Yeah, my GPU is 38 millimeters. I don't know.
Right. That's how we measure teraflops, is how you measure like literally calculations.
So I have a question for you guys, if you don't mind. So for you, like thinking about, plugins, not like a plugin that maybe you've had issues with or, takes up a lot of DSP, but if you were able to dream up something, right? Something that would be, that the power draw would just be too much. What would it be? Like, what would be your ideal world plugin? Because that's the thing that gets me the most excited, to be honest, is, people being able to do that kind of thing, Well,
I mean, we most recently were playing around, and I have been playing around with Waves Clarity VX, and that certainly puts a load on the system. It's using a neural network, so it's learning and adapting real time as it listens to the audio, right? Mm-hmm. So it can't do that in literal real time. Like you can't like insert it on a track and monitor the sound of what it sounds like having removed the room tone, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what that plugin does. It sucks the voice out of the background noise and isolates it in a kind of freaky, magical kind of way. So to be able to do that 100 completely real time, and that would just be a button on, a $300 USB audio interface. Mm-hmm. That would be cool. I'd like that. I'd buy that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, we've talked so much about that kind of stuff. Actually, almost that exact situation, and that's been a big request that a lot of people have been leaving comments for too.
I mean, there's analog ways of doing it and digital DSP controlled analog ways of doing it. Like Cedar has been doing it for many years, and they can do it with low latency. But it's still essentially just an analog process. It's just a bunch of essentially gates, frequency dependent gates. So this the technology and clarity is a whole different animal. So yeah, I can only imagine the future where now we buy an interface and it doesn't just have a button that says vintage or 4K or air or whatever to make you sound sparkly. Now you have a button that just says, remove room tone or clean up or clean. And there's just no longer any background noise. You could set up your mic in any crappy environment, any hotel room, and the software will now remove the room. It'll calculate and remove all orderly reflections. It will allow you to create the acoustical environment in which you're recording from any acoustical environment that you happen to be in. That is where we need to go, because then we don't have to have booths. We don't have to have rooms. We don't have to have anything. We just have a mic and a computer.
George, you realize you're doing yourself out of a business, don't you?
Yeah, but can you imagine this as an example that you have a booth at home and you have an interface that has a cleanup button, but it also has a memory and it can memorize the sound of your booth. And then wherever you happen to set up your mic, within reason, it will copy that sound.
Yeah, that's another cool idea. I try to do that manually. I try to match EQs and use my ear and make a preset, and all this stuff. But to have an automated system that does that, so you can go on the road with a different mic and work in a different space and pick up a session mid-session and just keep right on recording, and the client will never even know the difference. That's audio science fiction right now.
So now what if you combine that, right, with visual or acoustic measurement, binaural or ambisonic, impulse response recordings of specific spaces, and then that could also influence the machine learning capabilities of, replicating certain spaces so that your audio is always perfect. Also, There's other companies doing interesting stuff with the IRs too. I can't talk about all of them, but there's some pretty interesting stuff out there.
Impulse responses, is that what that IR means?
Yeah. I just call them IRs because I'm like that. Yeah. It's.
I'm here to speak for the people that are going, huh?
One guy says DAW and I say DAW, and the other person spells the whole thing out. It's just it's this round robin of linguistics makes my brain explode.
I know, but
to your
that's
point,
what I'm thinking of. This is the thing. What I do for a living is creating acoustical spaces out of crappy situations that people can record voiceover in. That's what I spend every day, all day doing. And yeah, I love making money. I love money. But, I also love solving problems. And if I could give a client a plugin or a device that will allow them to subtract the room from their situation and basically make them sound like they're in an anechoic chamber, within reason, that would be pretty awesome, because now the producers would have a clean audio track no matter what.
Well, and here's the beautiful thing. What you do is you could build that with GPU audio, right? Slap your brand on it, and then you've got a plugin that you can use and license that, along with the business model of what you actually already provide, and use that as a way to scale what you do. You know what I mean?
We'll be talking.
because, and this is like the business developer in me, right? Is this side of things where it's like, look, we understand the plight of not wanting to be put out of work, right? I'm a saxophone player. I don't want, robot sax to replace me or something like that. And the only robot sax out there it came out a few years ago. It was on YouTube. It's like some Japanese project where they had a fake mouth with like a diaphragm and a tongue. It was very bizarre.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That wasn't designed for saxophone.
That's the first version.
The best intentions, right? But I'm sure it ended up in some red light district. But
Sounds like an old girlfriend of mine.
but the point is like,
Get it from Saxyland.
I think I'm trying not to totally engage, but like
stoop to our level. Yeah, I understand.
No. You guys are good.
Not my level, their level. It's the Australians, goddammit.
Trust me.
Sorry, Jonathan.
No, you're fine. I'm just laughing over here and trying to drink some water.
Linguistic limbo, we call it.
Yes. So, for me, it's like, how can you use technology if you can open up pathways for users and make your life easier? That's when you can finally start to scale a business model, right? And that's why I think, any concerns that people have about, if it's so much more efficient, I'm going to spend less hours on a project and I'll make less money. And it's like, well, but then you'll have more projects, right? And your reputation will grow and you'll build more things. So I think at the end of the day, technological progression, as long as it's done with the user in mind and like with actual business cases in mind, will be awesome. And to your point on that specific voice plugin, I mean, if you guys haven't already checked it out, you should check out Rtx Voice, by Nvidia. This is a GPU powered, noise cancellation sort of AI machine learning based thing. It's very good. It's, I think also, their Maxine, there's a project called Maxine, Maxine. So if you look into those, for instance, like we're investigating those right now with our technology, and our assessment of those things is that we can, again, make those essentially real time, right? So, there's a huge, there's a huge market for that in the future. And I don't think it just is for audio producers either. I think it's for broadcast, anybody who wants to get more likes on YouTube because their voice sounds like Barack Obama, whatever you can think of, related to voice. I think that's going to be a huge industry all on its own.
Well, I had absolutely no clue that there was anything called Nvidia Broadcast. So that's a whole new thing. I had no idea that they were dipping their toes into that world already. So that's interesting.
Yeah, they're not an audio specific company, which is why they actually, have been happy to kind of accept us as brand partners,
sure,
and work with us and help us develop and cultivate relationships, with the technology companies that are out there, because they don't even have
partnership.
Oh man, we're so stoked. Yeah, they don't even have an audio SDK on their own, right? Yeah. So for us, it's really cool to be in that fold. And yeah, by the way, obviously everything we're doing is going to work on AMD cards. It already works. We just haven't rolled it out in pre-beta yet. So
yeah,
that'll come the end of May. So if people want to test out AMD cards, they can do that at the end of May. And we have a Discord server, by the way, where we do a lot of this testing. We have about 4,000 people that have signed up in the last 2 weeks and downloaded the plugin. Just from, posts on forums and stuff like that. We haven't done any real hardcore marketing or like really put any money into it yet. And I think about 700 have joined the Discord, which is really cool, because those are the people that are actually, talking about their experiences and sharing their own visions for what this could be. And that's really having a big impact on what we do on the development side.
I'm just imagining, while we're talking, is an interface which has that dial, which basically is Clarity VX, using GPU and some AI that memorizes your booth at home and copies it wherever you go. That would be an absolute Monty.
That would be amazing. Yeah, all it would have to do is just send like a sweep, right? Like a little signal out and do a measurement of your room.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you're right. I mean, all it would take was a small chip. I mean, you don't even have to have like a crypto miner's GPU installed, right? I mean, this could be embedded on the interface. So yeah, if you want to build something like that, shoot me an email because we're open minded.
We do.
There you go, AP.
Yes,
There's your job for the weekend.
Well, I tell you what, though. I mean, like it would if you got in bed with someone like Centrance and offered this chip to put into their interface, it would be a monster.
It would be a monster. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's totally possible, and the beautiful thing about that too is if it was in an interface, right, and that GPU is being accessed through the Thunderbolt cable, then you're not messing with your GPU that's on your computer, right? Which is, sort of a net benefit for some users who only use a single GPU on their computer. I can think of another couple of ways that would be really interesting, but yeah, by far, I mean, if you can get this embedded, then, you could also, they could have their own, DSP plugins and stuff like that were designed for it. But again, the beauty of it is that it's not a closed ecosystem. It's not a walled garden. It's not it wouldn't be an interface where necessarily, only the plugins developed by that company could, take advantage of the interface. The interface could have a value proposition for the user that expands beyond that, right? It's like, hey, we made an interface that kicks ass and can use and has a GPU embedded in it. It doesn't cost that much more than like a typical interface, right? Maybe a little bit more at a percentage level, but the performance is like X amount of tens of 40 times faster or whatever, right? Or has more volume or can process like hundreds or thousands of tracks or something like that. And then at the same time, it's like, oh, by the way, every plugin that's on the market that works on GPUs can also use the processing from this. That would be a huge value proposition for people. I mean, imagine if like a universal audio, interface also powered up all your other stuff, right? That's kind of what you would be looking at is, having that kind of scalability on a personal level, with your own products that you've already invested in. Yeah. Oh, and one thing that needs to be said though is that you do have to redesign a VST3 to take advantage of a GPU audio, system, obviously, because, the architecture of a GPU is so different that we created a new, SDK for getting people to port their VSTs over to, use the GPU audio tech stack. So that is one thing that needs to be said that's relevant. But I don't think it's a bad limitation. I think it's actually a good one.
I can actually see someone like Genelec getting into interfaces if they ever thought about moving into another product, another area, as opposed to speakers. An interface with that kind of memory that can copy a room, sweep the room, and then copy it wherever you are. They would love that.
That'd be interesting. You could sell it. Look up the Nvidia Jetson processor. It's like the Jetsons, the old cartoon.
My dad told me that.
I knew someone was going to jump in on that one. This is like the redemption arc, right? Of my ageist joke earlier.
Jed Clampett. Yes, exactly.
Revenge.
Been waiting 20 years to tell that gag.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, so their Jetson processor is like that. I mean, it comes in a little box, it's like sits on your desktop. It's, they have fanless GPUs. They have all kinds of GPUs for all kinds of purposes. So it's, I would love to see Genelec do something like that.
Man, interesting.
I look at how limited the DSP in Universal Audio's hardware is, and this would just absolutely blow it out of the water in terms of capabilities. I mean, geez.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of Universal Audio's products, obviously. I mean, I've used them, in the past, and sold them on Craigslist, because it's like everybody, it's like you use it and then you realize, well, maybe I don't actually need this right now or whatever it is. So I don't own any right now. Right. It's an interesting thought, the idea that, to put it lightly, that the GPU that's already on my gaming laptop that cost me $900 can outperform, like an Apollo. That's pretty crazy. But at the same time, I think it's all within business models, right? I was having this discussion with, Herb over at Pensado's place, sort of off camera, a couple weeks ago. We were just chatting about it, and I was thinking about, how, business models are interesting because it's like when you build hardware, the impetus is really trying to get the users to buy the next piece of hardware, right? And I've got a lot of respect for that, But if you're a hardware agnostic company like us, we can't really prioritize that. So for us, the hardware is moving forward without us, right? Which is why I think that our priorities as an innovation company are so heightened. Because it's like, dude, the new Nvidia GPU is coming out, in 4 months, whether you like it or not, right? The 4000 series. So we got to be ready for that. You know what I mean? Because what it means is that even just based on the GPU driver update, some of those driver updates give like 10, 15% increase in efficiency and performance. So you're getting a boost in performance just having a driver update. And then when you buy a new GPU, you sell your old one on Craigslist, upsell yourself about $300 and buy a new one, after the cost of selling and repurchasing a new one. And you might have something that has, 50% more power, a year later. So that hardware drive is constantly there pushing. And that's what makes GPU audio as a technology exciting to me from a user standpoint, because I know that I'm going to just continually get upgraded, without having to, sort of be squeezed, emotionally by marketing and stuff like that. Like, oh shit, I got to buy the new one, right? I got to buy the new DSP interface. As much as I love those interfaces and how game changing they have been, you know what I mean? I think, the future is digital, and hardware will find its own way, and I think hardware is going to change, and I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. Sorry for all the swearing. I hope Universal Audio is like, hey, let's put a GPU in there. You know what I'm saying? It's well, there's no reason not to be approaching it from that sort of mindset, unless they want their products to be specific to their hardware. But even then, maybe there's a concession that can be made somehow. I just think GPU audio is such a great, it's a great vessel for companies that want to do innovative things. That's basically the bottom line.
When they announced Spark, there was an interesting reaction from the user community. Let's just put it that way.
I thought that was an interesting. Yeah, we were posting it in our forums, on our in our internal channels, and generally the vibe was like, hey, this is exciting. I think it's great that there's going to be native support for this stuff. But what the guys that didn't like it were the ones that were already heavily invested in the hardware. They were the ones that were. They're like, this isn't a club anymore. I don't want to be a member of this club because now everybody else that doesn't have a DSP based hardware device can use. That's not fair. That's what we got out of it. There was like a lot of that going on. It was kind of funny. Oh man, that's just the worst though, right? Like when you spend all this money and then it's like, oh, by the way, it doesn't work. That'd be like all the Euro rack guys, who are in modular synthesis. Yeah. If one day the United States, put a moratorium on like a certain type of power supply or something, right. Everybody's like, what the hell just happened? I can't use any of my shit. I have like $150,000 worth of gear, and I totally understand that pain. And, hopefully more tech companies will realize that, that sort of, again, that walled garden sort of mentality, look, it's not the mindset that the users of the future have, right? I think like young people, like teenagers, guys in their 20s, girls in their 20s, right? Everybody who's making music, like people aren't thinking that way necessarily. They're not thinking in the same old traditional style of, wanting to be sucked into like an entire specific kind of ecosystem. I think it needs to be an open future. So it's a painful move, but honestly, I think Universal Audio is super smart to be doing that. Yeah, I agree. From my perspective. Does anybody here work for Universal Audio? No. I do unofficially, but I've never gotten any checks from them. So. Oh, cool. I was just curious. That's all, Well, I say so because I've probably sold more fucking Universal Audio interfaces to voice actors than any on planet Earth. But besides that, I'm not bitter or anything. But I have supported the use of their product heavily for about 10 years. And I've waned in my support dramatically over the last 2 years. But that's a whole nother discussion. But I'm very interested to know more about how we can find better tools for voice actors who don't need to know about hardware or dependency on infrastructure, just need solutions so that they can do their job, because they don't get paid to engineer. They get paid to act. Yeah. That makes me think of something, if I'm not jumping in on top of anybody here. Am I?
Nope.
No.
No.
Okay, great. That really makes me think about, accessibility and user interface design, right? So, one of the big questions that a lot of people have is like, okay, does an audio system need to be a plugin? Does it need to be in a DAW? Like, why can't it just be on the web, right? So, I mean, a really cool product idea might be, for someone who's dealing with dialogue like you are, what if you were able to build the system that you wanted, into a web browser, and the GPU, powered plugins and stuff like that with all the DSP performance that you need to get a delivery right, the first time, is actually on a super, sort of like brain dead easy, interface that's housed on the web, right? I know that there could be internet connectivity issues in some LA studios, they're just kind of like, haven't figured out their Wi-Fi and stuff. But, it's not going to be too long before that's a thing of the past, I'm thinking those kind of situations can be possible too. And actually the way that we do GUI design with GPU audio, the tech stack allows you to house your VST plugins, port them over to web like super, super easily. So you can still have all those crazy, amazing graphics if you wanted GPU processing, low latency just on the web. So basically our plugins are the future of the plugin system will be interoperable with web-based audio platforms. So that'll make it even easier for, developers or companies to provide, access to users and artists.
Well, to conclude, someone who, like myself, who is not techie, if it's a one-button kind of system that sits in an interface, that would be superb.
We will talk about it. That sounds amazing. I would love that.
Not as much as me.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to Tribooth. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters. And mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. With tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.